Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. It is 4 o'clock, and this is the regular meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I am I'm the president of the board, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. Let's do a roll call. My name is Jeff Randall, Commissioner for District 1 and President of the Board.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
Okay, and we have a reasonably full agenda. Do we have any changes or are we good?
Okay.
No changes.
I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the agenda is approved. So we're now at the public comment section. This period allows members of the public to comment, limited to 3 minutes each, on items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president or the designated chair of the meeting. Not permitted to disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. So do we have anyone who wants to comment on things not on the agenda or on the consent agenda? Leo.
I know this has been asked before. Nobody seems to either respond to, say, or acknowledge that they've received an email. They don't send a return receipt when a return receipt is requested. And I know that you guys have heard this from others as well. We have no idea whether or not it's been gotten captured in your guys's spam filtering system, because Barracuda seems to have a bad temper about capturing things that really are not spam. And sometimes they get kicked back and sometimes they don't. We have no idea. So, you know, a receipt saying, at least saying that, you know, you did actually receive the message when you look at it would be nice.
Okay, and normally we don't do back and forth, but I will ask you one question. Do you have a recent example that you can think of?
Days ago, I sent you guys an email
To the commissioners ourselves? Okay, thank you for the example. I can do a quick search. But is that me? And sorry for the back and forth, but I'm going to do it anyway. Is that the main target audience you're talking about, or is it also emails to staff? Is it mainly emails to the commissioners?
Well, everybody. I mean, staff, commissioners, just the PUD in general. So then sometimes you'll actually get a return receipt that says this message was deleted without being read.
Okay.
Some systems will actually, you just delete it, we'll send back a thing saying.
Well, I will tell you, I did get your email from 2 days ago. So we are getting them. I'm going to go ahead and move on. We have some more hands up. Is there anybody in the room who wanted to speak on items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda? Not seeing any hands right now. I'll go to Phil Stover online.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Phil.
This is Phil Stover, District 1, speaking really for the neighbors I have that are in the adjunct area of the Jefferson North broadband build out. And there are a number of people that are asking me when they should receive an email that talks about the progress and expectations for that. I know that I personally received one, but I don't think it was the adjunct flavor of the email. And I'm curious about when those adjunct emails might arrive.
I'm sorry, Phil. I don't know what you're talking about. could you please restate what email you're referring to, hopefully receiving?
Okay, so the broadband build out for Jefferson North had an update for everyone who signed up for the service that was in the grant area. And those emails went out shortly after the last PUD meeting. And I think you guys saw the budget and some of those details about the schedule that went out in those emails. What I found out was that the adjunct areas, which are just outside the grant area, did not get an email. And that was delayed because some more work needed to be done on the emails. And I'm wondering how that work is going and when those emails will come out.
Thank you for the clarification. Does staff have any response to that now, or do you want to wait till manager and staff reports to respond? If you have a response now and it's short, go for it. If it's longer, maybe wait.
We're gonna address the issue of the adjacent areas at the next meeting, so we hope we get some more clarification before we contact folks.
So the plan is not to send out the email until after the next meeting, when staff is hopefully going to get some more direction, clarification from the board. Okay, clear, everybody?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Then we have a number that ends in 246 online. Well, if you can go ahead with your comment or question.
Yeah, Roger Risley, District 2. Our governor, when he got installed recently, his second executive order was about the housing issue and what we can do to lower the cost of housing, specifically regulations, et cetera, that add to cost of housing. About the same time, possibly the same week, we passed our capacity charge. Just thought that the governor put a spotlight on how untimely, unhelpful, and unfortunate the capacity charge really is. I realize we're not a state agency, but it's still our problem, you know. It's a community problem. It affects the PUD, it affects their employees, it affects their future employees, affects their contractors, and it affects the members of the PUD as well. And that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. And I will just say for the public who may not know a lot about it, we did in that capacity fee include a significant reduction for affordable housing projects, because we are very aware of the housing crisis we have in this county. But I will just say for myself that if we don't have an electrical system for people to hook up to, that's going to be a big barrier to housing. And that's why we have a capacity charge, because we need to improve our system and it's got to come from someplace. So that's one of the sources. Okay. So Roger just went. Is there any last chance on public comments? Going once, going twice, gone. We are moving on to manager and staff reports.
So Jean is going to introduce our newest employee, I think.
We have Kyle Chase, and he will go ahead and introduce himself. He's our energy efficiency specialist.
Sure. I didn't stand. Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Chase. I'm the energy efficiency specialist here. I've been working in this field for about 20 years. I started out there in the field, actually installing insulation and HVAC and that sort of thing. And I kind of moved on to program management for some different contractors who support utilities throughout the region. I worked for BPA for a while, doing their heat pump commissioning program. And I am a voting member on the Regional Technical Forum with the Northwest Power Council. So anyway, just happy to bring my breadth of experience to the district and help out our ratepayers and, help roll out a lot of programs that we'll be doing this year. So thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for being interested in the job. And I'll just say for myself that that's one of my concerns. And we've got the REST program, the loan program to help people who could make improvements energy efficiency improvements, but might not have the upfront money. So we hope you are here to help answer people's questions and help more people get their homes to be more energy efficient. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
That is the goal.
And Dan. Oh, you might be muted, Dan.
Thanks, Jeff. You hit a little bit of it there. I don't know if Gene's going to further explain, or maybe Kevin. This is a new position completely, or are we rolling out part of a former employee's role into something more, just so the public understands, why we're hiring, who we're hiring, a little more in depth as to this position and why we need it.
Kyle is mainly brought on board to manage the RESP program. So that is his overarching. Along with that, he's going to be managing funds from Commerce, BPA, different energy efficiency measures. He's going to help us put together our 2026 clean energy implementation plan, which we didn't do so good on with our first one in 22, but this one's going to be excellent.
Absolutely.
And he's just going to really help get a face out there in the community and get people talking.
Thanks, Gene, and welcome, Kyle. I've met Kyle already at the office, so thanks.
Ken?
I just want to say, Kyle, welcome aboard. I appreciate the experience you're bringing to the role, and glad to have you as part of the team.
Okay, what's next, staff?
So, Mike's gonna give us, talk to us a little bit, fill the board out on, bringing our accountant back again this year.
So with Kevin's pending retirement coming up and the changes in general management, normally we would have to go out to do an RFP for auditors, but because of everything going on, we'd like to go ahead and use BSGM, who is our current financial auditor, one more year if the board's okay with it. We've kind of talked to Joel about this a little bit to make sure that we could. If the board's okay with it, we would bring back a resolution authorizing us to go ahead and use BSGM again, just because of Kevin's retirement and the changes that we don't know that are going to be forthcoming towards the end of the year. They're already familiar with us. We're not trying to now, we wouldn't have to try to bring a new auditor in, get them up to speed, plus get a GM up to speed on everything. So.
Okay, seems like we have enough moving parts in motion. We don't need more at this point, but commissioners, is there any concerns about that at this time? With this coming back to us at a future meeting?
I don't have any, as long as we're complying with all the bidding and procurement rules that we have in place. I'm perfectly fine with not creating any more work than what we've got going on already.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Next, Will is setting up some meetings that he will discuss real quick.
We are going to host a meeting the first week of March. It's our stakeholder kickoff meeting for our PT pipeline hydro generation feasibility study.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. You've heard about the project before. We applied for a grant to do this study a couple years back. We've had so many competing projects. It's taken us a while to get it off the ground, but our engineer ICPE has begun work on the design parameters. And we're going to meet with all the stakeholders, which includes the city, the mill, the Navy, the port, the county, and the hospital. So we're hoping to do the meeting. We've set out 2 dates right now. We may do one of those dates, or depending on availability, we may have to do both. We'll be gathering information, outlining the project, and that will start the engineering study.
And will those meetings be public, or will they be mainly aimed at those stakeholders getting their input?
This first one will be aimed at the stakeholders. The final one will be a public meeting.
Okay, great. I guess, any questions on that? Not seeing any? Go ahead. Next item.
And because we have such a full schedule, we're done unless the.
Could you do an Eagle Ridge update?
Oh. I had that on my.
That's all right.
So an Eagle Ridge update real quick. As of this December 20th, the state signed off on the project and gave us permission to go. We are still in the county for permitting. Reason HDR went to the county for permitting is because of the wetlands on the edge of our project. Jose is working closely with the county. We should hear something this week. He's been back and forth with them the last couple days on questions they've had.
Okay, so we're still working on location of the work and potential county permitting for that
Yeah.
work, and hopefully not to need permitting for that work.
Hopefully the proximity to the wetlands doesn't cause additional requirements.
Okay, all right, Dan.
So I was wondering if maybe Will could give us a quick update on BEAD, of whether, you know, where we're at in that and if that's looking good, bad, in between.
Is there any news on BEAD?
Yeah,
What do
we
you want to share?
yeah. No, there's not a lot of news. We submitted on the day of the deadline. We've not heard anything from the state broadband office. We know they're reviewing applications. We don't know for sure if anyone else has applied for our area, which was project area 151. We expect to hear something from the state broadband office in the next week or two.
Okay. And then I had a question. And did you have a follow-up on
Yeah,
that?
one other quick question. Maybe I beat you to it. Something about the 3-meter thing. There was an email. Is that something that was going to be up today? We
I
didn't.
was going to cover that in my commissioner report.
Okay.
And then, so the one question I had is, I was going to Seattle, I think it was early Tuesday morning, and we had an outage in town that I heard later from Jameson that there may have been a structure fire or a wire down. I don't know if that outage was big enough or you know anything about it to report on it. And I got a call from the school district just saying, hey, we don't know what's happening. What's happening? So they called me and I called you and Jameson, but is there any?
I have a simple update. The wire came down. It early response, and I don't know if this is still there. An old mechanical splice that holds the wire together failed.
Okay.
And let the wire come down. But that was very early. I don't know if that was actually the cause when everything was said and done.
Okay. And then this might be a Don McDaniel question. Do the schools participate in kind of the emergency preparedness stuff? Because it seemed like they didn't know how to get information about what was happening. And I never mind if, you know, somebody calls me because they don't know who else to call. But what do we know about the schools' involvement, and have we reached out to the schools so that they know how to get information if an outage is affecting them? Or I don't know if that's a short answer or not.
So I can go from staff's standpoint. In the past, key people at all the schools used to know who to call and how to get in contact. A good example was Art Clark at Chimicum, Henry, their maintenance supervisor. They would just call us direct. We would take things in and help. So many changes, at least at the Port Townsend School District. I don't know if they really do know who to reach out to and how.
Could we reach out to them? Because you may mention Art Clark. He was the finance director for Chimicum. Now he's gone. His equivalent, Amy Kyle, at the Port Townsend School District, called me. So I think she would be the natural person to reach out to, just to share, hey, if something is affecting you guys, here's some ways to reach out to us. But I think
We also need to get I'll work with Joel on this, some local agreements with the school district to be able to help out in these kind of emergencies. Port Townsend, we never entered into an agreement. We have with Chimicum school districts, but we have not with Port Townsend.
okay. Anyway, a little small emergency that brought up the issue of better coordination. Okay,
Comment on that real quick?
sure.
I'm actually getting ready to do a key account push out to all the schools again and update that. So I will make sure that Port Townsend gets a little extra.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, so if we're done with staff reports and done with commissioner questions, Commissioner Collins, would you be willing to do your commissioner report?
Yes, I would. So on the 6th of February, I signed some of the documents related to the BEAD grant request. On the 7th, I met with the general manager. I attended the audit exit report on the 10th. Returned on the 13th for signing additional documents at Otto Street, again related to the BEAD request. On the 14th, I met with the general manager. Earlier today, had a call with legal counsel. On the 12th, I received a phone message from Jessica Dillon, and she raised an interesting question. She said, the Citizen Advisory Board has been suspended for the last couple of years. And she felt it would be appropriate to address the issue of formally discontinuing the Citizen Advisory Board, that it had served its purpose. And we ought to not just leave it out there hanging in limbo. And I'm in agreement with her recommendation. Looking forward, I'll attend a meeting the morning of the 20th with the Timber Collective, and then in the evening attend the ICG meeting. Following that, on the 21st, I'll have another meeting with the general manager. On the 28th, I will meet again with the general manager and also attend the Jefferson Broadband Action Team meeting. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Dan, you want to go?
You bet. So I attended the PPC Members Forum, that's Public Power Council, on February 5th. The new CEO of the Southwest Power Pool, Lanny Nickel, a senior staff official, and SPP board member, Steve Wright, formerly a BPA administrator and a general manager for Chelan PUD, were there to talk about the FERC approval of the SPP Markets Plus extended day-ahead market tariff. They spoke of the SPP culture and how Markets Plus matches up against the CAISO extended day-ahead market, which those two would be competing markets. John Harrison and BPA staff were there, along with representatives from Tucson Power and the Salt River Project and Arizona Public Service out of Phoenix, Arizona. Harrison said that BPA's intent is to fund the next phase of the Markets Plus process. So they're still leaning, they being BPA, towards the Market Plus extended day-ahead market product. There were discussions about any movement on the Cal ISO market, which is the competing market to the SPP market, regarding what's called the Pathways Initiative, which is a group that is focusing on the governance that California ISO market has and the impediments it brings for BPA to get into that particular market, because it has a lot of legislation that California has in there that puts California first in just about every instance. So that's one of the roadblocks with looking at these markets and why BPA is leaning towards the Southwest Power Pool market at this point. I attended the PPC Executive Board meeting on February 6th. The DC lobbyist Sam McDonald reported that the federal employee buyout not only could, but is affecting the BPA workforce by 5 to 10%, was the word that was out there at the time. Also that the Tier 1 product will be ready June 1st with our contract negotiations. It's anticipated that the BPA Tier 1 product will be fully subscribed, meaning there isn't going to be any room for any extra. Everybody's going to get just the basic of what they're being told they're going to get, unless BPA goes out and develops or buys new resources. So again, we're going to have to make a determination probably in June on our tier 2, which I don't see any other options for us at this point. Energy Northwest reps gave an update on the Columbia Generating Station power uprate project on their main reactor, along with some comparisons on similar work that's been done by other nuclear installations over the years. They're one of the last ones to do this type of an uprate. It was announced that Douglas and Chelan PUDs are now members of PPC. Let's see, and I met with General Manager Street on February 7th. I attended the BOC special meeting for the State Auditor's Accountability Exit Audit on February 10th. I attended the Waputa New Commissioner Orientation and Commissioner Education Steering Committee meetings on February 12th. There they talked about the OPMA and the Open Public Meetings Act and the Public Records Act. Training was given and discussed by the representatives from the State Attorney General's office. Later, there was a PUD and general manager and commissioner panel that explored the relationships and connection and the dynamics that go into working together for the benefit of the utility, that being the relationship between the general manager and commissioners. I took part in the Waputa Day on the Hill activities on February 13th. Weather was clear and brisk. The coffee service and biscotti were welcomed and appreciated as always by legislators and their staff. Later at the Waputa Legislative Barbecue, I was able to speak with several legislators, including Senator Chapman and Representative Theringer, on issues that affect PUD customers and PUD rate impacts that some of the decisions Olympia are going to have on us. Thanks to Will O'Donnell, Jameson Hahn, and Jose Escalera for manning our booth in the Capitol Building Rotunda and fielding a lot of PUD-related questions by legislators and members of the public that were visiting the Capitol that day. On Friday the 14th, I attended the Waputa Executive Board meeting early that morning. There were 2 items, and I don't know if you gentlemen listened to the Board of Directors meeting or not. They touched on them a little bit, but one of the main things that the Executive Board was looking at is a staff medical benefit that's building a financial liability and is being considered for discontinuation by performing a buyout of the Waputa staff, both past and present, that take advantage of that, and placing funds into their VEBA accounts. That would get rid of that ongoing or building liability, and it would actually free up some budgetary costs, a couple tens of thousands a year by making that move. So I think you'll hear more about it, probably some emails from Waputa. But that's one of the things that was being discussed. And then the second one that the executive board was working on is also working on establishing a facility evaluation and maintenance policy and program for the perpetual upkeep of the Waputa building and that property. Discussion next month at the board of directors on dues, budget impacts, and the proposed plan will take place. So again, that was the second item. Was there hasn't really been anything in place. The building's 17 years old, and it's starting to have some issues. So, and there wasn't really a plan or a process. So now there's going to be something put in place to where we can track it, and it could have a small dues impact on how we want to get the fund where it needs to be to keep that active and up to speed with what needs to be done. Later that morning, let's see, I attended the board of directors meeting. During that meeting, Scott Wilsons from BPA gave some information about the end of the year financial report that BPA was at about 288 million in reserves. And that's in the window that they shoot for at the low end. But he's also looking at it. They may drop about another 100 million in this first quarter this year. So that's getting down in uncomfortable territory for them on the amount of reserves that BPA has. And that also they're at about 85% of their normal water or average water so far. So they're a little concerned about that as well. Also,
and if I can, while you're on the subject of
Yeah.
BPA, was there any discussion about the staff cuts?
Yeah, that was the next thing I had here. I talked earlier about a 5 to 10% impact, but it's come out since, and you should see some emails from other organizations, particularly PPC, that BPA was about 400 employees was the impact that they felt. And I saw an email yesterday or today that came out that said some of those 400 have been rehired. So it's ongoing. BPA is looking at bringing back some of those. They were probationary people. They were people who had just entered the system to come on or being interviewed, that sort of thing. And there was about 160 to 200 current employees that were going to take the government retirement buyout, the 8-month, pay thing that you've been hearing, everyone's probably been hearing about. So it was about 400 people, and I think BPA has about 3,000 employees. Don't quote me on that number because I don't think anybody asked that, but it seemed to me that was the number they were at. So, it's a little higher percentage wise, I think, ultimately what they're looking at. But it sounds like it's going to get worked out. That BPA is a critical, a lot of critical work needs to be done, and that's being brought back to DC about that sort of thing. So, and when Kevin and I are back there next week, this is one of the issues that we'll talk to Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell and some of the other people about in the government back there, that helping to make sure that BPA is able to keep getting its power to us, that our contracts will all get signed up this year, and that the rate cases that they're working on will be able to be fulfilled. So
And
that's kind of where we're at with BPA, unless there was any other question on it.
Yeah.
Good, Jeff.
So on that item on the BPA employees, I think that congressman who spoke to the board of directors, if I got my dates right, was the one who said, actually TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, has an exemption.
Mhm.
They're not being subjected to that same thing. So I think when you guys go back to DC, you should say, hey, this is the same type of organization. It's a
Yeah. Well, East Coast, West Coast, we know kind of how this politics
Well,
things works.
that's not an excuse.
Yeah,
Saying
I know.
other
I'm not
states
making excuses, but I understand the politics a little bit. And
Well-
TVA is a little bit different of a balancing authority than what Bonneville is. So again,
Not at
there
all.
are some,
they're the
there's a
same.
little bit of differences.
Anyway, that's my opinion on it, that we should be saying, hey, we should be getting the same treatment that TVA is.
Yeah, we will. And again, the other thing that goes into that is there was a lot of talk, 8 years ago about privatizing BPA. That's hasn't been thrown out there this time, but it's always something, and that might be part of the negotiating that's going on within the federal government, is about how efficient things are. And so again, when Kevin and I are back there, we'll make sure that they get the point that we need to be treated fair and equitably and equal with TVA or any other balancing authority across the country.
And the federal government doesn't own BPA. The customers in our region own BPA. We're the ones who paid for it. It's not for them to sell. It's our system. Anyway, did you have more to cover in your report?
I'll do what I got coming up. I'm going to attend the ICG meeting on February 20th. I'll meet with Kevin Street on the 21st. I'll be in Washington, D.C. as I spoke with Kevin, and I think maybe Will is going as well. I'm not sure the full team who all's going. February 23rd to the 27th for the American Public Power Association fly-in. And I will try to make the Jefferson County Home Show on March 1st. I assume we have a booth for that. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. So on February 5th, had calls with Kevin Street and Paul Becker of Eagle Ridge. On the 6th, I met with the transition team and had a phone meeting with Joel Paisner. On the 10th, attended the special PUD meeting on our audit. I mentioned the calls I got during the outage on the 11th. On the 12th, I flew to Spokane to attend my first NOAANET meeting as a representative, and it was interesting, and I was really glad I went. One of the things they brought up is that I think we've all heard about how Benton PUD has kind of integrated their staff with NOAANET. The term they're using is convergence, a convergence agreement where NOAANET took over the operation of the Franklin PUD broadband system, and they pulled all their employees into NOAANET. So that was Benton, pardon me. Benton PUD did that. Franklin PUD has now signed an agreement to do the same thing. They have fewer employees, 3.5 employees, and they only do wholesale ISP work, but they are going to enter into an agreement with NOAANET. And later on, CEO Craig Nelson said that NOAANET's business model, they're really looking for half a dozen to a dozen other PUDs to enter into the same kinds of agreements so they can see reoccurring revenue from that stream of business. So expect to hear more from them pushing that idea. Let's see here. Mike Henson announced that NOAANET received a USDA workforce development grant that's aimed at tribes, but anybody can go to it. And basically, it will provide basic training on how to handle fiber, entry-level technical training. It will provide 2 years of funding for this program, and it's free for tribal members. For others, there's a cost. And the reason I bring this up is just before I went over there, I was a friend of mine who's kind of a 30s-ish man here in Port Townsend was asking, what does the PUD do to help just regular people who want to work for the PUD but don't have the kinds of skills that we show on our job descriptions that we want? What kinds of opportunities for training? So this was one I thought, hey, we could maybe include some information in our newsletter or somewhere else that there is this program, people who want to get into broadband, that if it might be an opportunity. So Mike Henson at NOAANET, and it was a USDA workforce development grant that they have received. And the board approved the program proceeding. Kitsap PUD did a presentation on their broadband business plan. Sorry about this. For the first 15 years, they focused on anchor or commercial institutions, and they built out their backbone to serve that. Now they have a population of about 300,000 in Kitsap County, and they're realizing that since 2015, residential hookups are driving the growth of their broadband business. So they have taken additional steps to encourage more residential hookups because they were not on a sustainable path. And FCS did a revenue forecast for them and concluded that they were not on a sustainable path without more hookups. So they've done a few things to encourage more hookups. They dedicated $1 million of their tax proceeds to their broadband business. They decreased their cost to connect new customers from $2,500 per customer to $200 per customer. Right now, we're sitting at $750 per customer. So that's an issue I'm going to bring up when we get there. And then they also said that they have a maximum cost to the homeowner for build out of fiber capped at $2,000. So I don't know where the $2,000 versus the $200 comes in, but for normal customer hookups, it should be no more than $200 in Kitsap. They have borrowed some more money to make sure that they have money to do that kind of aid to construction that that $200 won't cover the construction. So they've borrowed some money to make that happen, but they see that as really necessary to keep their business going. And something really impressive, Kitsap now has enough GIS and engineering staff that they're doing all their own engineering for their broadband system. So unlike us, we're hiring consultants. They're doing it in-house, which I was very impressed with. NOAANET also talked a little bit about the Chelan PUD retail opportunity. NOAANET has launched NOAANET Blue in Chelan PUD country, and they did it primarily because there was a local ISP, was bought out by Zigbee. Chelan PUD wants there to be a local option, so they're working with NOAANET to provide that local retail option. Let's see. We talked a little bit about the bill that NOAANET submitted that would allow Public Works Trust Fund money being available to private ISPs. So far, there's been no negative comments for that bill in the hearings. Senator Hansen has introduced a bill that would remove private corporations from being able to access Public Works Trust Fund money. We had a discussion of that, and basically lots of the PUD people said, yeah, I see no problem with public money being limited to public institutions. But at the end of the day, they voted to say that NOAANET's going to continue to support Bill 5188, which is the one that would authorize emergency funds to be available to private ISPs, and NOAANET would be the one trying to help them get those projects going. But at the same time, public utilities like ourselves, if we wanted to support Senator Hansen's bill, we're free to do so. So that was kind of the discussion there. And there was some discussion about that's going to happen at future meetings about new members coming on board, about what kinds of criteria would apply to them. That's when this issue of will they be members who will integrate their business into NoaNet, basically turn over their broadband operations to NoaNet. So we'll be talking about more about that in the future. And then there was this discussion of should there be a minimum spend with NoaNet for members? Should we be using NoaNet to a minimum extent? So no decisions, but that was discussed. On the 13th, I attended the Waputa Legislative Luncheon. I wasn't feeling very good, so I left that early and came home, missed the meetings on the next day or that afternoon, and then listened in on the executive or the board of directors meeting on the 14th. On the 18th, had a phone meeting with Joel Paisner. On the 19th, or on the 18th, where are we? Yeah, I did today. And then tomorrow I'm going to talk to Kevin. And then on the 20th, I'll be at our special meeting. And then I have this letter, this memo that I've written. And this is in response to that multimeter issue that Dan brought up. And I intended to get it done earlier, but I just wasn't feeling well enough. So if you remember, within the last 2 months, we had John Capps come to us and bring up this. Ken, did you have a question on this or something I already talked about?
Going back to the special meeting on the 20th, I understand that that meeting has been canceled.
Correct.
Is that the case now? Okay.
Unless there's a driving force from the board.
What was the purpose of it? We just never got one?
Determined.
And we don't have one? Okay, so I don't think we need one. Any other concerns with canceling that? Not seeing any, so it looks like it's canceled. Okay, thank you for that, Ken. And so a few weeks ago, we had John Capps come to one of our meetings and explain his situation where he bought a house in Port Townsend with 3 meters that each serve 3 100 amp panels. He's charged 3 meter base fees. And so I wrote a memo kind of outlining this. I went to his house, met with him. Kevin did also. So I'm proposing this memo to the commissioners to see if there's interest in this issue and us doing something about it. So just go through it really quickly. A couple of corrections. I just sent this out today and Mr. Capps got back to me. The meter base fee he's paying now is $30.21. So 3 of those is actually $90.63 instead of the $85.80 that I had listed in the memo. When he bought the place, the meter fees were $14.50. So it was $43.50 a month. And one other correction I have in there is that a single residential service can be anywhere from 100 amps to 320 amps. I have in my memo 400 amps. It can go up to 320 amps, and a 320 amps can serve basically 2 200 amp panels. So the maximum amount of instantaneous energy usage that any one customer can use off a single meter is 76,800 watts. I had it listed as 96,000 watts. It's 76,800 watts, which is still more than the instantaneous power that Mr. Capps can use at his home, which is 72,000 watts. So the bottom line for me was I guess the additional item is that in talking to Kevin, when we do rate studies and they're calculating base rate fees, they're doing it based on the number of meters we have, not necessarily the number of residences, because the number of meters is an easy number to grab. But I guess I feel like when they're presenting that to us, they're really talking about the impact of a home or, a home and a garage or whatever. It's kind of one residential customer account. And this gentleman has 3 customer accounts because he's got 3 meters. And the response we've had to him is you can take the meters away by combining them into 1 meter, but that's going to be expensive. It's going to be $5,000 or maybe much more than $5,000. So I'm kind of wondering, and I shared with you our current rate policy, could we have something in there that acknowledged that in situations where a single residence has more than 1 meter and the customer wishes to have just 1 bill, that we could administratively conclude that they have 1 base fee and maybe significantly reduced extra meter fee to cover the cost of replacing those extra meters over time and reading those extra meters. So I told Mr. Capps I'd be bringing this up. I don't know if he's here. I can't remember here he is. He's in the room. But I wanted to see if there was interest in the other commissioners that this concerned them. Because for me, it does feel like a fairness issue because the way we've been structuring our rates, the base fee is getting high. So if you had a base fee of almost $100 a month instead of $30 a month, it would get my attention too. So anyway, who would like to go? Dan's got his hand up.
So, yeah, I read your email, Jeff, and it had some technical stuff in there. And full disclosure, I was under the NyQuil when I was reading it, so I hopefully I understood it all the way you intended it to. It seemed to make sense to me, but again, that's the one side of it. I'd like to hear staff put a proposal forward of what's the con to it, because change. I don't know if it's something that requires a change in policy is where I'm going. I don't know how many things down the road, how many people this could affect or would affect, and in what ways it affects the utility. I think you're right. I agree that there's a fairness thing involved here. And maybe we put it on the next agenda with some sort of a presentation and recommendation from staff. That's
Right,
kind of
and
where I'm at.
Thank you. And I didn't, with time available, I didn't want to get massively into it. I wanted to introduce it and see what the interest level was. So thank you, Dan. Ken?
Yeah, I agree with Dan that this is something we need to have the staff look at. And I think I have no problem with reducing the charges to Mr. Capps, and I understand that situation, but I think also that going forward, we would need to waive those additional fees on a case-by-case basis. I think having a policy, a blanket policy without looking at individual cases opens the door to there being exploitation of an allowance. Somebody who has an ADU on the property that is being rented out could perhaps try to sneak by with one meter charge when in fact they have in effect a business on their property.
Right. And I agree with that. I was thinking too, we could have some sort of application process where we define what we think the situation is and have some criteria. And if somebody feels like they fall within that intention, they could apply and explain their situation and have like a small fee to cover the cost of the staff time to review it. And it wouldn't be automatic. That was, I was thinking too. So I'm hearing is there's interest by the commissioners to ask staff to maybe look at it and come back in the next agenda if there's room in the next agenda to do that. Is that what I'm hearing everybody say? I'm seeing heads nod. So staff, any thoughts at this time or responses or concerns?
Staff will put something together, some pros and cons, but staff supports our existing policy now. So, but we will put some pros and cons together for a case by case type thing, because that make a blanket statement would be terrible, I believe. There is so many multiple meters on multiple properties that if we would just blanket statement, it would be not a good deal. So we will put something together. But it, like I say, from our first reviews, staff is against this change. Now that you're talking about being limited, we'll work on something.
Okay. And John Capps is here. Did you have anything you wanted to add, John? Okay.
Nothing.
Thank you.
I appreciate your attention to this.
Okay. Thank you, John. That is the end of my report. Leo.
I had a comment. So you mentioned that Kitsap PUD is now doing their own in-house engineering.
That's what I was told by their
Right.
GM.
So before Mr. left, I had showed him, so that with AI and everything nowadays, I had shown him that it's free. You can actually go online, mark the spot, like say the Quilcene substation, where you can get connectivity to, then draw a polygon around the area, and it'll take all the public housing maps and will actually within seconds design your whole network for you.
Interesting. AI engineering for free.
Yeah,
What will
that's
they think
free.
of next? Okay,
Hey, Jeff.
yes.
So on the Kitsap part of that NOAA report you gave, I saw
Mhm.
some chatter on social media about, I think it was the same thing you're alluding to, and that was the cost to get the fiber to the home off of their main line, or something to that effect, and some of the charges that people are spending on that. I don't know if it aligns with what we're doing or not, but I'm just kind of curious of what your take again on that was. I know we're going to talk about it later with our $750 charge. Are
Yeah.
they doing away with all those type of, well, I don't know if I heard what you said exactly right, whether they're not going to charge people to run it out 1,000 feet, or what exactly were you saying there?
Yeah, that's a good follow-up question. I don't know if Will knows the answer to that. By what Angela said, it sounds like the $200 covers a certain length, and beyond that, then the customer has to pay, but they've capped the maximum under any circumstance they'd have to pay at $2,000. I don't know, Will, if you want to take a shot at
That
clarifying.
sounds reasonable. I'm not sure of the
Okay.
details.
So I think the 750 and the 200 are probably meant to be equivalent, but it'd be interesting to find out the details of, does theirs cover 1,000 feet, or what is it? What does the 200 cover? Fair question. All right, if we were done with that, I'd like to move us along to consent agenda. Do we have any changes to the consent agenda? If not, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye, consent agenda approved. All right, and under old business, we have broadband rates and policies. Will O'Donnell, I presume.
And I want to wish Will good luck.
Okay, give me a second to bring up the presentation.
Well, he did say in here, this was intended to be a multi-touch process, I think, but
I did.
Maybe
Yes,
not.
that's true.
And we're asking for no action today. This is
Yeah.
a quick run through.
okay.
Oh, hold on a second. I'll just start talking a little bit about the process while I connect to the Zoom meeting so I can share. No, it's better if I just do it this way. So we presented a couple of drafts in December, I believe, and we intended to come back in January. We've had a lot of work on the table. We've kind of put this off while we finished the BEAD project and worked on some other projects. We're bringing it back to the board today. We've made some modifications based on feedback. We've got a new proposal we'd like the board to consider. If the board is amenable to the basics of what we're providing, and we can make some simple changes, we're hoping to bring it back on the 4th in the consent agenda or for another review. Just one more tiny little bit. Now I can share.
I guess just to fill time, I did note that you had made some changes to the effect dates
I did,
on
yes. Yep.
when some of these rates would go into
Yep.
effect. Okay.
Okay, here we go from the beginning.
So in all, excuse me, I'll ask an open question as you get started. And are all or most of these geared at these changes that were made geared towards compliance for BEAD, or is this in the best interest of the whole broadband enterprise?
It's always in the best interest of the whole broadband enterprise, but I'll cover the BEAD part as I go through it, Dan. So our rates were last updated November of 2023. We had some products that we felt could use adjustments based on more experience connecting people out in the real world. The low income rate has been discussed a couple of times. We adopted an official BEAD rate, but we do now have no subsidy from the ACP program, and we would like to put in a more generous discount if possible. At an earlier date, the BEAD rate that we passed was set to go into effect of 2027. We've talked a lot about transport rates. Staff feels they need a redesign and an increased price. and we want to increase revenues, and we want to simplify our products. And you'll see we tried to make things a little bit more simple and easy to understand. The rate changes proposed, we're increasing rates we're creating a new rate for business pond customers, a separate rate. It's a slightly higher rate than our residential. We've got increased rates for transport customers, increased and standardization in our construction charge. We set up a 2-tier construction charge where we have a business charge and a residential charge, and decreased rates for low-income customers, as discussed. Based on previous discussions, we looked at a phased-in approach. As we've stated from the beginning, we'd like to have the transport rates go into effect as soon as possible for new connections. But we're willing to have existing rates remain in place for current customers through the end of the year. And the new products would go into effect that we're discussing outside of the transport rates. The new products would go into effect in June rather than right away, so we can give some time to get things set up in the system. The current products that people would be able to keep would go, if they have been changed, those would end on the 31st, and beginning in January 1st, they'd have to switch to the new rate and product. So this is on the top is the existing pond rates for wholesale and retail that we have today. And we've made our two most popular products are residential pond. Those have worked well. We don't propose touching those products. We are proposing bringing down the price of the higher bandwidth products and splitting them up in between the residential and business, as shown here. We're proposing putting together proposing a 2-tier low-income rate. We're moving to a more 2-tier system for the rest of our utility with our CETA support. And so we've designated the cutoffs at 200% of the federal poverty level. That is the BEAD rate of $30 a month. And then for folks that are between that 200 FPL and 80% of AMI, we'd have a $55 rate. It would be discounted. It wouldn't be discounted as much. So we'd have a 2-tier discount rate.
Do you have a clarifying question?
Yeah, because I'm looking at the rates that were initially in the packet, but they're not the same as.
Did we change the packet to what you're presenting now?
We had a couple errors I corrected in the packet. Yep.
Okay, so I guess can you see the screen okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yep. So that's the low-income program eligibility for the 80% AMI and the 200% FPL, and then it translates down to the wholesale rates. And we're looking at doing away with we have a 5,000 megabit per second tier and moving to a 10,000 megabit per second tier. We have 10,000 meg ports, and there are now 10,000 meg laptops. So we would just allow it to be able to burst up to that full speed rather than arbitrarily cutting it off at 5,000 currently. So that's the proposal for the pond rates. And those would all go into effect June 1st if passed for new connections. Okay, transport rates. Above is the complicated transport program that we have currently. We wanted to simplify it and bring it more in line with our other PUDs. We've shared those tables in the past, and I can bring them back up. But we're looking at a proposal of 100 megs at $150 a month. For 1,000, we've lowered. I think we had 600 before. We've lowered that to 500. 3,000 megabits per second is 1,000, and we went from 2,200 a month to 2,000 for the max 10,000 megabit connection of commercial transport. We've simplified the internet access products. If you buy a dedicated product, that means you have a pre-subscription to a dedicated bandwidth. It's 50 cents per megabit per second. And if you have a metered charge where you only pay for what you use, but it can fluctuate, you pay a slightly higher fee of 60 cents per megabit per second. And there's $100 engineering charge to set those up. Okay. Commissioner Tupper.
Dan.
Yeah, so again, you mentioned the charts you shown before, and I know we had the VLAN transport with some of the comparables you had. I mean, are all these still consistent with being competitive with what everybody else is doing? Are they above or below? I mean, how close to the competitive threshold are we with what everybody else really is doing?
We tried to be slightly lower than the middle. And so on some of them, we're closer to the lowest, and some of them were closer to the middle. And I'm happy to share those charts with the updated numbers.
One good question on the upper part, the current rates. I guess you've got it on the lower rates too. MRC and NRC, that stands for?
Monthly recurring charge and non-recurring charge.
The non-recurring charge would be like a hookup charge
Yeah,
initially.
in this case, it's an engineering charge, but it's one-time connection fee.
Okay. Leo, did you have a clarifying question or?
Oh, yeah, so the way he has got this laid out, VLAN transport really doesn't make sense. Because you went from an end user port, which is the normal, to a VLAN transport. I mean, $2,000 a month for 10 gig. I mean, I've got one VLAN. That's all I'll ever have is one VLAN on the PUD network. So I'm going to pay $2,000 a month.
If you have a 10,000 gig transport, you would pay $2,000 a month. Yeah, for that.
Because they only have one VLAN.
Yep. So as we showed before, this is the so I think I've done this both ways. I should correct that to network transport, and it's $100 per VLAN. I can change that for the next draft. But it's for the connection between the 2 points.
What's that?
That's the charge for the connection between the 2 points.
Okay.
VLAN.
Leo, please hold your comments till you're recognized. I think we want to let him get through this stuff here, but I do have a clarifying. We'll let you ask some more questions once we get through this. Clarifying question on the VLAN transport rates. When you talk about other PUDs or other public entities, are there other public entities charging these rates, these types, or providing these types of services? And is your statement that these speeds are in line with, and their charges for them are in line with what the other utilities are charging?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And you can demonstrate that if we want more.
Yep. I've shared those
info.
charts before, and I can send those to the commissioners.
And I'll leave it up to staff. Would staff rather have questions and comments right now on this one, or would you rather get through the whole thing and then come back?
I'm fine either way. We've been through it a bunch of times. I'm happy.
All right. I'll entertain some more discussion then.
So like I said in my previous emails to you guys, these rates are not comparable because like certain things like you have no service level agreement. You're not offering me 5 nines of service. If something happens and you have 10 days of power repairs to do before you even get to the fiber, right? I'm 10 days without service to my customers. The rates that you see from others, such as the other PUDs and, Astound or CenturyLink, right? These have a service level agreement that says that you're going to be down no more than 5 minutes in a year's time. Okay. And after that, you're going to start getting credits. And you get a 4-hour mean time to repair, which means you're going to be back up and in service within 4 hours. And if not, then you start getting a serious amounts of downtime credits to the point where you could get months worth of credit towards your account. So these are not comparable by any means to those. Okay.
So I'm going to allow or ask one clarification from staff. Can you comment on that about, I don't know what you would call that, performance?
No, a service level agreement. Yeah. So we are almost complete with our service level agreement. So we'll bring that to the next meeting. We can offer.
So this will have a service level agreement.
This will have a.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Will to keep going. And then Leo, if you want to bring us back to stuff, let you do that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So please keep going and let's get through the whole thing.
Here we just simplified the language, and then we created that two-step charge for the construction and funded service areas. Rather than having 3 columns, I just simplified it to down to 2 columns for within the footage limit and past, in an unfunded service area, a funded service area, and then the designated adjacent areas. As I mentioned before, we're going to have to bring back some discussion about the designated adjacent areas in light of the BEAD funding and how we want to handle some of these places where they're eligible for BEAD funding, but people want connections sooner. How do we want to weigh those topics? But currently in our active construction area in the Olympic Fiber Corridor between Quilcene and Gardner, we are connecting those customers and charging those rates.
Okay.
So as I said, we're proposing a 2-tiered, keep it simple. We already charge $1,200 for businesses in Port Townsend. We charge $750 for residential outside. So now we would just standardize that $1,200 for all businesses, $750 for all residential.
Okay.
What's that?
Oh, Dan, please go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Will, back up to that slide. So I noticed you didn't highlight the past footage limit, because I know there's a change between a couple of those boxes. You know, one says 550 feet, now it says 500. The other was 1,100 feet, now it's 1,000. So again, I just wondered why we didn't highlight those changes as well. And again, it still brings me back to the question I've had for a long time is how are we getting at that distance? You know, the 750 feet, or in this case, the 500 and the 1,000. I scratch my head a little bit trying to figure out how we're coming up with those numbers.
The 1,000 was the level that we set in the grant application. And then 500, because it's not funded by the grant, we just set it at a lower distance. And I think the average is under 500 feet per connection.
Thank you.
That does not, and I think it's in the policy. I'll have to look and make sure I highlight it. So if you're hitting concrete, if we have other things like that make it more expensive, there will be additional charges.
Yeah, my concern is that we're going to recover our cost, you know, and whether these numbers are really going to put us in a position to do that, to recover our cost for making these, you know, line extensions out for these fiber to the home. So again, I'm still, I don't know what our market share is going to be, because it's one thing to say if we do it to every passing that required that's one thing. But if we're only going to have, you know, a 60% take rate, or, you know, market share of 50% or whatever in those areas, it concerns me about having those numbers be set, you know, to a certain number. I would like to see a range maybe.
Yeah, so these do not recover our full cost of construction, Dan, much as the Kitsap's charge of $200 does not at all recover its full cost of construction. It covers part of the construction, and the rest is made up in the subscription to the service over a number of years. We set this number up in consultation with Doug Dawson as a reasonable amount per an assumed average construction cost, and also at a level that would not discourage owners from taking the service.
I have a question on that. At what point in time do you think the business will be providing the service for a while to see whether the 750 is at the right level or not, or if it's high enough that it's discouraging people from doing it? How
So
long-
far, it's not discouraging people from signing up,
So we're
especially because we've offered terms for payment.
So we're getting people signing up for the 750.
The
Okay.
hardest part is they want to pay online, and we haven't come up with a good, easy way to get them to pay online. But people are accepting, as long as we have offered the terms, a lot of people want to do it. Some people, like I said, in these BEAD areas that we're going to have to discuss, they can't wait to pay it to get the service, but we have to decide if we want, how we want to handle that.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that.
More info later.
Yep.
Okay.
We changed up a couple of things here. We added the equipment rate return charge is in the broadband service policies. We just made it more obvious. So it's not a change. It was the charge that was already in the policies. Every piece of equipment that's not returned after 60 days, we charge $150 for. The snowbird equipment charge, this would be for custom. We have a lot of snowbirds. If you want to turn your service off for up to 4 months, but you don't want to have your equipment returned and have us come out and reinstall it, you can pay $15 a month. to avoid the equipment return charge.
Hibernation charge.
Yeah, yeah, and that would be available to our wholesale customers as well. The Wi-Fi mesh router rental, we already do that. We're just offering a lower price for additional routers after the first one. We have and we change it from an indoor and an outdoor, because the big one that we have a big outdoor one that we provide. Everything else is the same.
Okay.
Will, this is Joel. I have a question for you on the Snowbird equipment charge. How many people fit under that category?
I don't know yet, but I imagine there'll be.
I just know from experience that other clients of mine have moved completely away from that.
Interesting.
The issue for us is that if they turn it off, we have to go take out the equipment and then reinstall it. This was to save those expenses and time.
Joel, what was your understanding of why those other utilities chose to get rid of it?
It just wasn't, it was coming at too big of a cost to the utility.
And then when presumably they got rid of it, enough people just left it on.
You know, it's a huge benefit to customers, but you know, if people want to, you know, turn it off and reestablish it and pay all the fees, that's one thing. Otherwise, you know, it's just they didn't feel it was necessary to retain customers that way.
But at this point, this is the staff recommendation.
This is staff recommendation at this point. Yeah. And so when this happens, the service is cut off. They can't access the
Right.
service. This just saves us rolling a truck to get the equipment and then to put it back into place when they're back in.
Okay.
in staff.
Tom Tiersch, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you. I'm a little bit confused about the router rental fee. I've asked this question a few times, and it seemed to me that originally, and I was told repeatedly that there are no additional charges. The rate is the rate for a residential customer, and you get the equipment, and there is no separate listing of fees for the router or anything like that. So that if I don't want your router, if I want to just use mine, I can't do that. Basically, I have to take your equipment, and it's not a separate charge. And yet here it's showing as what is it, $10 recurring charge for your basic 1 gig kind of connection. I don't know when that crept into the rates. I don't recall that, but now I'm confused because now we have additional units, and we have $20 for a greater than 1 gig rate. Can you explain? Can I, in fact, just get rid of your router? I have my own mesh router. That's what I want to use. All I want from you guys is an RJ45 port that gives me internet, and I want to do all the routing myself because I've already invested in that equipment.
Yep.
So there's a few questions in there. See if you can work through them.
No, I can track all of those. So for our service, we're requiring all residential retail customers to take our equipment, which includes either a optical modem and a Wi-Fi router or a combo modem router. If you want to have mesh, that's an additional charge.
So the retail mesh Wi-Fi router rental is for additional equipment.
Yep. That's
beyond the
additional
first router.
Yep. And every single home will receive the optical router no matter what, whether you take it service from the PUD or for one of our qualified ISPs. If you fail when you cancel the service to return that piece of equipment, the optical router, then you're going to have to pay that $150 charge.
So that optical router is built into the $75 rate.
Yeah, that's built. There's no extra charge for that equipment in the rate itself. But if you don't return the equipment when you're done, because it's our equipment, we own it, then you have to pay for the equipment.
So is what you're saying that we're going to provide this router to Tom. If he uses his own, it'll still work, but
his own router may not work. So our suggestion is if you want to use your own equipment to take service from one of the qualified ISPs on our network, they have more options. We've put into place this system where we're providing the equipment because it allows us to provide remote help desk services and reduce our truck rolls.
Okay,
But there's more options from the qualified ISPs. If you're savvy and have your own equipment, that's part of why we have an open access network to offer more choices.
all right. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tom, because it sounds like you want the option of using us, but using your own router. And we're saying, sorry, if you're using us, we want you to use our router for these reasons.
Well, it does and it doesn't. That's the first I've heard that I can't just plug my own router into yours as an extension, because I can certainly do that with Starlink. Okay, thank you.
All right, please continue, Will.
Okay. So the next one is products removed. We've removed the battery backup from the list. We're not going to offer that anymore. We've removed the VoIP phone, the VoIP phone, internet phone. We were hoping to launch that. We're not launching it in the next year or anytime soon. Again, we've removed the 5,000 megabit per second PON service and just gone to the 10. And we removed that BEAD LIPE rate, and we just put it into place as a current rate at the 200% FPL. Products added, we added the 80% AMI LIPE rate, then the 200% FPL, the Snowbird rate, the outdoor mesh, and the 10,000 megabit per second PON. On the policies, the big change to the policies is we had rates and notes before, and we moved, just to make it simple again and clean things up, we moved the notes from being a separate attachment to the rates to just being incorporated in the language of the broadband service policies. We cleaned up some of the language, removed the procedural graphics, which don't have to be part of the policy, and we added in some revisions to the definitions. And that's all I have.
Okay.
So next step, sorry.
Okay.
Just one more thing.
Okay.
So we're going to review them today. We're hoping to bring them back on consent agenda or for the final touch with a resolution on the 4th. If that is successful, then the transport rates for new connections would go into effect on the 5th. And then all the rest of the rates would go into effect June 1st. Folks could continue their current products till the end of the year, and then they'd have to switch to the new products and rates.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question because Leo's here. So the situations that Leo's brought up, there's I think 2, the Narrowstone Island situation and then that apartment complex in Port Townsend. That's my understanding of.
A couple of apartment complexes.
Okay, maybe more than one apartment complex. For those
locations.
So for those services that Leo's customers are currently enjoying, what would be the effect? When would the
They'd
effective
remain
rate?
in place till the end of the year.
Till the end of the year, and then he'd be required to utilize the new rates. Okay,
Yep.
that was my question.
It wouldn't be required, it would just be changed. to
That
the
would
rates.
that would be the effect.
Yeah.
So other commissioners, other questions? Or I'm going to turn it over to kind of public questions. Dan.
Well, I know further on in the document, I think it's the service agreement. There's some references to, whoever takes our service on our network, they have to meet a 3 nines and they have to agree to not throttle the service or whatever. I'm just wondering, how are we set up to monitor and enforce those particular things? And what kind of a cost are we putting on that? Is that a full-time employee that has to monitor? Is this something that's done by an algorithm that kicks up that one of the people on the network or entities isn't upholding their end of it? How does that part of it work?
We don't actively monitor those. Those are what we require, and then the ISP signs a agreement stating that they'll meet the requirements of the policy. If we have reports of any issues, we would look into it. Generally, to date, our ISP partners have been good to work with and have honored the terms of our agreement. We haven't had any issues yet, but if we were to have any reports, we would investigate and we would contact.
So the answer is we don't actively monitor and look for that. We only go if someone points it out. Is that the answer I'm hearing?
Yeah, what we monitor is if the connection is active, and we monitor the total bandwidth passing through. If they were limiting, I'd have to talk with Curtis, our network engineer, how he would detect that, but it's not been an issue to date.
So again, I'm just making sure that the language we have in these agreements eventually, that it's clear, what the consequence is if we do get that kind of a report and how we would deal with that. So, thank you.
So is that in there? It's like they have to do it. So if they don't, what happens?
Yeah, that's in the current, then they would violate the terms of the agreement and they would potentially not be able to sell services over our network.
Okay. Did you have a point on this issue?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
actually, I was gonna comment, but since that subject is up now.
Well,
right,
hold on. I want to let Ken to ask his question, then I'll come back. Ken.
So within the body of the broadband services policy is some discussion about the PUD's ability to enter a property, and there's no consideration here in terms of the notification to a customer. The way it reads now, it appears that what it's saying is that if the PUD identifies a service problem, they can just walk into someone's house without any advance notice. And I don't think that's what's intended at all, but I think that section needs to be reworked a little to take into consideration the need for advance notice and communication.
Will, do you know what section he's talking about, or do you need a reference?
No, I do know what section. That section is already in place and has been approved by the board. And Joel would have to explain more, but I think that's more stating our basic rights to repair, to access our equipment. And
Our equipment's on the outside of the
no,
house.
our
though.
equipment is in the inside as well. So our point of demarcation is actually inside of the home.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, but our procedures are certainly different, and how we manage our the relationship with the customer. We give notice. If the board would like to put in some notice standards, I don't have any opposition, provided Joel is comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think we're obligated to provide some level of notification and consent. And if the customer doesn't want to consent to allow us in there, then, we'll have difficulty repairing or continuing to provide service, but that's a different question.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd like to see staff come back with a revision of that section. And I had one other question. What is a MiFi? MiFi?
Mobile internet, it's a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot. And I can put the definition if that's necessary.
Sounds like it's necessary.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just kind of wondering on this notice thing. I mean, we've had experience with situations where we're providing notice and we're doing things like the meter replacement project and other things. It seems like we could come up with language that works for us and works for Joel and can be practical. And hopefully we're not doing it too often.
No, that would be no problem. We take we don't storm into anyone's house. We have lots of notice.
So the commissioners would feel better if we saw something.
Not a problem.
reasonable. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn to, so what I'd like to do, Leo, if I know you may have more than one question. So if we could do like one question and then go to, if there's anybody else, and then we'll come back and we'll dedicate as much time as we can and still get through our agenda. So please.
Just because it was on the policies thing.
Go ahead.
Is why, and that was
Go
brought
ahead.
up. So on your policies thing, so the RCW says that rates, terms and conditions have to be the same amongst all providers. That includes the PUD, right? If you go through your broadband policy and you look at stuff like we have to maintain a 99% uptime, we have to assure at least 75% of the bandwidth. Every single one of those items at the end says not required by the PUD. PUD doesn't have to do this, doesn't have to do this. So that is discriminatory. That's discriminatory. You're telling me I have to do it, but you don't have to do it.
Okay. Is that going to be covered by the the service agreement?
The service agreement we were putting together is for the commercial transport. The language in here is for what we expect from the broadband service provider on our network. We can outline some special service level standards for the PON network as well.
It
That's
sounds
no problem.
like, that sounds like kind of a fairness issue.
Oh, yeah, no, but we hold ourselves to the same standard. It's
Okay,
not-
so it sounds like we need to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm talking about your whole broadband policy, not just to a specific product. Just in general, must maintain this, must maintain that, but you're not required to.
I want to take a look at that in more care because I'm not sure Leo is accurately describing the law correctly.
Okay, so somebody please write that one down that we're gonna
I'm looking at it,
follow up on that. I'm
Yep.
talking to staff.
providers.
All right, I'm gonna go to Philip.
Hi, Phil Stover here again, District 1. I wanted to follow up on Tom's question about, if you own your own equipment. I notice on the qualified providers list, for example, Advanced Stream doesn't require you to use their equipment. They'll recommend equipment, they'll help you buy it, but basically you own it if you don't already have it. But I never see them in any of these meetings, like Leo, for example, shows up, and I know he's a qualified provider, but is Advanced Stream being made aware of these rate change kind of things that are going on? And are they really a player here, or are they just going to disappear from the website sometime? And so, do they have customers already, I guess, is maybe a way to answer this question on the 150 or so people that are actually using the service?
They do have customers, yes. And we're going to send, based on this conversation, we're going to send out another notice to the ISPs.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Since we have a couple more items on the agenda, I'd like to try and wrap this one up by 5:30 and to see what can we get done and then provide some direction to staff for a continuation on this. So hold on for 1 second. The commissioners, do you have any more? We've got more questions from Leo, at least in the audience. Do you have more discussion or questions? Not Dan. Dan saying no. Ken, I can't see you for some reason.
No,
No questions. It's fine. Okay, fire away.
All right, so we need to go back to the whole VLAN thing, because I don't think you guys are interpreting what a VLAN actually is. A VLAN is actually what it exactly is, a virtual. It doesn't exist, right? So my VLAN's 1482. I can literally have 10,000 endpoints on that VLAN. So my thing is, you're going to charge me $10,000 or $2,000 a month for a VLAN. The way you're doing this, that means I can literally have as many people as I want at the end of that VLAN. I just pay $2,000 a month. So the other way the PUDs have it is you pay them per endpoint. Right? The way you have it set up in your rates, I'm paying a single rate for VLAN 1482. And I can do whatever I want and have whoever I want on it.
So the VLAN, we charge $100 per VLAN to set that up. The transport is what we charge the $2,000 or $500 or $150 a month. And the transport is the delivery of the data from one point to another.
That's not how you have it in your rates. You're charging
Not
for the
currently,
VLAN.
but that's how we're doing it now. So we had originally put in there VLAN transport. I'm going to change it to network transport. I had before. I've done so many different drafts of these presentations, so I apologize, but it will say network.
So we do need to get, I mean, I appreciate you bringing up questions, and staff, we do need to figure out what is being presented. I realize that some of these things we brought up, we're saying, hey, we need some more language in here to be comfortable with it. But at some point before we approve it, we have to know what we're approving, and the public has to see what we're approving.
And we've had this debate and port price,
Mhm.
is it VLAN is a different term, point to point, because VLAN is from one point to another point. To go VLAN across our network, you have to have it set up. on Leo's side, he can VLAN everything he wants. We're okay, but part of the confusion is we keep trying to say the same thing in different ways, and moving forward, we'll come up with terms that work for us that won't be questioned every time we throw them out, because from the 12 years I've been here, this discussion, is it purport? Is it from point A to point B? Is it the true VLAN to get from here to here? The terms are really mean the same. We will do a better job. We'll come up with one standard name and explain it, but it means really a network from point A to point B.
Would it be helpful to have Curtis in these
We
discussions?
Curtis in
And,
discussions.
and I can see too that there may be product lines that we're offering now or we've offered in the past that we decided is not in our interest to offer in the future. And I think that, staff can make the case for that. The board will make the decision on that. Hopefully we can fully understand what we're talking about. It may not be a product, you might have a product now that ends up being eliminated and we offer something else. So, I mean, that's about as far as I understand it right now. It's complicated, but I do see that we do need to be clear. And if it is something that we're just like, we've been providing this, we don't want to provide it anymore, and that's staff's recommendation. Just be clear on that. Don't dance
Yeah.
around it if that's
The-
what we're doing.
Well, the problem is if,
Please hold on.
Yes, to be clear, the product that we're talking about is transport.
Okay.
We've used different modifiers for it, but transport is the product. It's been the product. And what Kevin was talking about, you can price it different ways. We've done just a connection between points. We looked at doing a per port charge. It's priced a million different ways under the sun. We're going back to the connection model. And I showed diagrams at the last meeting, and I felt like I overloaded the commission with information. Tried to keep it very simple. This time.
Understood. Okay.
So, yep.
Leo, one last comment and then we're going to pause this one.
I mean, this is something that really needs to be discussed. So, and we use this in a point to multi-point configuration. Okay. So we have multiple points out there that this is connecting to, right? So this is not a point to point. This is, just like other PUDs and other, like I can go to a standard CenturyLink or whoever, you pay per endpoint. Now, the other thing is at $2,000 a month, okay, Seventh Haven's gonna be without internet. Marrowstone Island's gonna be without internet. I mean, I cannot afford, I don't have $17,000 more a month to give you guys. That's what it would end up being. So in Only Cap, they can't pay $2,000 a month more for internet service at Seventh Haven. That's just absurd. So if you eliminate these products, you're literally going to leave people without internet.
So in response to that, what I've heard from staff is that, could you pop up that one that had those prices?
It'll just take me a second.
Yeah, it's okay. Is that the one? So when we have 10,000, we're talking 10 gig, right?
I think it,
Yep.
So I think the question, Leo, and it's partly there's this customer relationship. You have this relationship with your customers, you're providing services to them. I can't ask you what those are, but you're making claims that you're not going to be able to provide that service. So what I've heard from staff is that 10 gig service is a lot more than you need for those customers, and that you could choose a lesser service and provide the same service that you're providing now. And that the pricing that we're putting up here is competitive with other pricing on the market. That's what I'm hearing from staff.
right, that is a lot more than I pay other PUDs and NOAA. And I've sent you copies of my bills. I've sent them to you, showing what I pay, anywhere between $50 to say $100 a month to other PUDs for similar services. So, and as far as, 10 gig, right? If you've got 140 people on Marrowstone Island, okay, of which a big chunk are expecting to be able to do gigabit, right? And I have to maintain a 75%, right, guarantee to my people that they're going to get at least 75% of their service consistently, okay? You need 10 gig.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop us here. Yeah, go for it.
Our whole network is less than 10 gig
Okay.
for Jefferson County, knowing that everything going off.
And we've kind of heard that before. So I'm gonna pause us here. I think we have to move on to get through our business tonight. I'm gonna request a 3-minute break. I need to use the restroom. Can we pause? Commissioners, okay with that? Quick 3-minute break? Okay, please. Okay. Okay, bringing us back from our break. So I like to stop our discussion on that one. I realize there's more issues. We've talked about this twice. We're going to come back with revised language. I don't think it can go on consent agenda. Leo, you've kind of sent several emails to us. I would say if you want to condense it down to what you see the issues are now, but I guess what I see is our staff is proposing to provide these products, and you're saying that you need these speeds to serve these customers, and I'm not sure how to break that impasse. I don't know if you want to share information about, hey, here's my documentation on my guys are using this much. I don't know what's appropriate and what we can do to document this, but I see an impasse here. So anyway, we'll pick it up at the next meeting, it sounds like, and you're free to talk to us between now and then.
Well, the only thing is, so I was told, we just had this discussion while you were gone about emails. In order to be a matter of public record, I actually have to be here and actually say my piece.
Well, an email is a public record, but
Well, yeah, but
so I got to move us on because we've got some other items, and we're not done with this. We're going to pick it up at the next meeting. Okay, so next item is the laborers agreement. I guess,
I'll
and
start
can we
real quick.
do it as quick as we can.
Turn it over to Melanie. This year with the laborers agreement, Melanie and Jean helped with the negotiation. I feel this was a very good negotiation between the PUD and the laborers. Both sides had to give a little bit here, but I think we came up with something that's good for our community, good for the people working underneath this contract, and good for management. So with that, I'll turn it over to Melanie.
Just a little bit of additional background. Laborers 252 represents about a third of our workforce, and their contract expired at the end of last year, December 31st, 2024. So we've been working to put together a successor agreement. So the tentative agreement to the board tonight is for your consideration for approval. Thanks to Kevin Street and Jean Pepper for the PUD negotiations, and then on the labor side, we negotiated with Chuck Moe, Eric Story, and Jeff Gordon. And so I appreciate all the productive discussions in this negotiation. So I will just summarize the key highlights of the compensation and benefits that go into this new agreement. We agreed upon a 3-year contract, so it would become effective January 1st of this year and expire December 31st of 2027. Currently, laborers gets time and a half when they go into overtime, and we would increase that to double time. That would be aligned with the IBEW contract. We have expanded the definition for bereavement leave. We had a very limited definition in the contract, so we've just expanded that to be a bit more inclusive of family members, but not too inclusive where it includes, it's basically just that now it includes, it's not extended family members, but more immediate family members than it had been in the past. And for the boot and tool allowance, we increased from $300 annually to $400. That is for workers out in the field. And our comp time, we had signed an MOU with the laborers about 2 years ago that we would give field workers who had to be on standby time, we'd give them 2 hours of overtime each day that they were on standby. So we memorialized that in the new contract. And then for holidays, they would receive 3 hours of overtime pay. We have also implemented the meal adder, which was new to the IBEW contract, and that's $5 additional for each overtime hour worked, rather than providing a meal allowance. That's just to streamline the process and make it easier for both employees and payroll to process that time. We are also increasing the HRA Viva benefit from $50 per month to $75 per month to each employee. And then our DCP match would increase from 3.5% to 4% to 4.5%. In terms of wages, so for this contract, we looked at each represented position compared to what the market is for geographic location. And the purpose of this was to remain competitive with our wages. And so looking at each position, some of the positions got wage adjustments or market adjustments, as we call them, so that they got up to the midpoint of the market. And then in early June, every position would receive a 4% increase. For years 26 and 27, we'll provide a cost of living adjustment aligned with CPI plus 0.5% with a floor of 2.5 and a ceiling of 8%. Jean, Kevin, did I miss anything that you can think of?
You covered it.
All right, all done. Okay, so commissioners, do we have questions on the laborers agreement? Dan?
So just for future, this one, we didn't see a redlined version. So in the future, maybe to have a summary of the changes. So when we read it, we can kind of understand what to look at. I noticed quite a few of them on my own without even going back and comparing, the overtime going to double time and, things like that. And on the VIBA, it was called out in there. So that's my only critique on it, is that maybe next time, do a summary letter up front for us. So we do, if we're not going to redline one and go in a draft form. So other than that, we have to be competitive. The skills that are needed for the jobs that we're doing, especially with the Hadlock sewer, taking that on, and other things that we've got going on to stay competitive with other utilities. This is the cost of doing business when you're, union shop.
Okay, Ken, any comments or questions?
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt the successor agreement with Laborers Local 252 for January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. 20, that date's wrong on your motion, so it should be 2027.
2027, yeah.
You want to rephrase that motion, Ken? It should be December 31st, 2027.
Yes, I do want to rephrase that.
And I'll second the amended motion.
Amended motion, okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay.
Quick, thank you, Bill. This is the last step. We will convey to the union that's been approved through the board, so we thank you for approving this agreement.
Okay. So I think we're to Jameson, and I'm just gonna ask Jameson, I'm running out of gas.
We'll cruise along here.
Go through this quickly, but I'm interested in hearing, get my mic on. Interested in hearing, did I miss something?
I just accidentally hit the stop share while I was trying to.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say, I've been wanting Jameson to give this presentation because we talk about a lot of contentious issues at the board meetings. And this has been a really positive thing that he's taken and run with and helped build. So I wanted him just to give a report to the board and all the education and outreach programs.
And I appreciate it too. And I think this is so much of why we wanted a local PUD doing power and all the other things. So please go ahead.
Well, hopefully we're keeping up, keeping up the mood here. So, all right. Is it all right if I stand?
Wherever you want to be.
You're good.
So my name is Jameson Hahn, for those who don't know, digital communications specialist here at the PUD, and we're gonna jump right into education and outreach programs. So program goals is what we'll be covering, our history of what we've done since, actually dates back to 2018, so let's see up here, outreach wise and current outreach, and there should be future as well on there. But as you can see, a big part of it is one-on-one with our customers. You engage your customers out there in the world. Like, for example, John Daner, doing awesome work as always at Powertown. Just showing kids exactly what can happen if you touch lines. So it's a really good display that we got, if you haven't seen it. So our goals always provide our community the foundation for understanding how the utility around them works. And with that, really closely in line with safety, because if you understand how things function out in the field, you'll have a better understanding of how far you need to stay away from them when they're not functioning properly. Also, as we've been doing with our student outreach, career pathways, because you have to be able to understand what's happening to know how it can help you in your future career. On to the next one there, Will. Historically, you can see us at the safety fairs, school events, parades, fairs, and community meetings. So those are, we pop up all over the place. And now we'll actually hop into, our current outreach. So there's three main spheres I like to think of. So you have schools, you have events, and then public meetings listed below each one. And we're going to dig into each one real quickly here. For example, we'll hop over actually in the next one to schools. So to break down what we do at the school level, CTE, which is our career, and it's an advisory group that I'm part of, career and technical education. It is the high school equivalents for, like, a lot of our students here don't end up going to a technical school or secondary education. It's basically giving them a jump start by having guided coursework. I'm part of the construction group, advisory group. So it's a lot of fun, really great group that works with Daniel over there at the Chimicum School. So
do you have a similar one with the other school districts, or is that the only one?
that's one that Kelly, so I've helped other students from like Port Townsend High School with things like prep for their interviews and such. And that's something I've done that helps all students around the districts. That's also a Kelly Watson planned event. Other ones we do here, you've probably seen a very large group of students every September roll through. Groups, that is First Friday. They get a chance to walk through the entirety and see and talk to some of our staff here. It's a lot of fun. So in-class grid discussions, Jeff was a part of a really great one we did for a physics class, and Jimmy was there as well. It was a chance for us to really talk to the students one-on-one about the example of a Texas grid issue, which you heard a few years ago when it actually got cold there and their grid didn't want to keep up. We got to explain why our grid is different and how that all functions. It was a lot of fun. So that also tied in with specific grid discussions, which Jimmy and I led them around between substations right outside the school up at Port Townsend and help them get a better understanding of, well, again, the grid around them. Career occupation exploration. We have brought students through from Quilcene, from even the wooden boat project. Kids have come up actually as part of that to our broadband facility and see kind of what happens on the back end there. So it was really cool last year. Internships, senior projects, we love having interns here. Every summer since I've been here, it's been awesome. And right now we even have a senior project student by the name of George, who is hanging out with our line crew and substation team and putting in 30 hours of work minimum.
Nice.
And building a senior project. So
Very cool.
Powertown is also in there, but head on to the next one. So I kind of cut off the top there, but since 2018, we've made sure that juniors and seniors across the entire community have had a chance to experience the utility, understand the utility a little bit better. So that is our goal. And For example, in the last year, we had 7 school-related events that we were part of or hosted, so. Now, the next step is that question on there, which is how can we help kids, younger kids, understand what's happening? The next. So FWEE, the Foundation of Water and Energy Education. I am on the board for that, and it is a fantastic group that is all about outreach materials surrounding hydropower. And as you know, 85% of our power here in the county is hydropower. And it basically gives students an understanding, and anybody an understanding of how it goes from river to power. And some of that is, it's hard to tell on the screen here in the bottom right, but you can see there are kits that they send out and allow teachers the opportunity to learn how to basically show how water powers everything. And that is something I'm working toward being a trainer for in class. So that'd be the younger kids of the group. So yeah, a lot of fun with that group. Up in the next one. All right, so student interns, we covered this earlier, student interns and senior projects. This is actually, I mean, a big part with Energy Northwest. This is an actual, down at Rocky Reach Dam, I believe, inside the powerhouse. And it's an opportunity that our interns have every single summer to go and explore the careers outside of these walls. So to see how the big picture comes together. On the right in the background, there's Jimmy Scarborough, and I think it's Isaac on the left, and they got to go all the way down through the wells to see how power production actually happens. We've had some great interns, and it's a really important stepping stone if you want to get into the utility career. So events, you can find us out and about. There's some folks you might see and around, you know, there in the corner. Everything from the parades to the all-county picnic, Power Town at the fair, and even the East Jefferson Fire event that, you know, we're a part of, and it's just good to represent. Utility tours, also groups you'll see wandering through here. We did some very specific ones through the Quimper Unitarian Fellowship. They organized some, and then another church over in Hadlock that we had groups of, I think, about 30 for each group that we were able to lead through. So they got to see from the starting point at their church to then meeting here, seeing and touring the facility here, and then going over to the BPA substation down at Fairmont. So they really got to see every step. Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah. So this one you'll see around some of our events coming up. It's a chance for people to understand some of the equipment that we have feeding their homes. Up close and personal. This was actually a huge hit for everybody who loves, it's like car shows. You put the hood up on a transformer and everyone walks around with their arms behind their back, kind of looking down inside of it, trying to understand what it is. And it's a really good educational tool. So you'll be seeing this one around some of the events this year. And then this one is the one I've chatted with folks over at Mason 3. They currently have the live demo, and I would love to chat with our line superintendent about maybe taking that for the day and letting our line crew show how it works. So this is, again, safety related. That's a big one that we are really pushing this year. Safety around the lines. The year is busy with events, and you can see from the school ones up on top and then the just standard events at the bottom. These are just the known ones that we have. The other ones are organized directly with staff at schools, and we're happy to, you know, be part of anything that people want to learn about public power. So any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Any questions? I know I blazed through that, but I think we got a couple minutes left, but
Questions, commissioners?
or ideas too.
I had a question, just did, that opportunity I brought up from Nolinette, that 2-year grant program for doing some basic skill levels for broadband folks. I don't know, any thoughts on that?
So that's more like the internship
It's a class to take someone who has no skills, getting them basic skills.
So things like the summit that we have coming up, it's a Production Alliance Summit. Opportunities like that, I mean, are something we can always look at for anybody to like kind of point them in a direction. For us, if they're in college, we can do the internship route.
Right.
And give them, that's what I did.
Right.
To get my direction, my path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really does help a ton. And that's open to any
We're
college.
open to those programs, Jeff. We've talked to Whidbey Telecom in the past. They started a program with Skagit Valley Community College. The challenge for us has been, we've talked to West Sound Tech before, and working together. As we find those opportunities, we would definitely like to take part.
Yeah.
So opportunity wise too, something that's not, it's a little bit different, but the FWEE that I mentioned earlier, they have summits around the state. They have one in Eastern Washington, Chelan. They also have one down at, is it Cowlitz, I believe, this year. I'm going to be attending that to learn how, because you send students there to learn engineering side, hydropower basics, but it's a week-long course during summer. So to be able to host something like that is always a fun thing to consider in the future. So,
well, I applaud you for, because I hear about these things too. You know, sometimes you hear like Douglas PUD's putting on something, or Energy Northwest, and you know, we hear about this in the energy industry, but our kids are not going to hear about this. So I look at that, it's our responsibility to go find these things and bring that info here and keep it up, you know, so that kids, we eventually have people who are qualified to come and help us. We need them.
and it can take them around the world, whether they stay here and help us locally. You're giving them a career path that's absolutely essential. So that's what I take into every group that I challenge.
Yeah. So I encourage you to keep it up and do more. Ken.
Jamison, I want to thank you for the presentation. There is a lot more outreach and community education going on than I was aware of. So I applaud your efforts on behalf of Jefferson PUD.
Okay, Dan.
Yeah, great presentation. It's great that we're informing the public on what we do and how we do it, and encouraging kids out there to look at us as an industry, because we all know how hard it is to, you know, find people to work in this industry. So thanks. Keep up the good work.
Yep. Thank you. Good job on the presentation and the program. Okay, it is 6 o'clock and we have reached the end of our agenda. I can see from the broadband thing that is not going to be, as Kevin indicated, is not going to be an easy one to get through. I guess I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to have some challenging issues to work with. But at 6 o'clock, we're reached the end of the agenda. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Night, everybody.